Good day, Saints. I'm
Lazarus,
and welcome to the first ever Gamer Diaries, a segment on my channel in which I talk about possible interesting things in my life, whether be it about gaming in general, or teenage drama, or basically anything under the sun. I want to try and come up with some unique video ideas every now and then, and I want to know which ones do work and which ones do not. I'd like to have a go with this kind of content, so please leave a comment on what are your thoughts if this kind of works on this channel or not. I'll also post my stories on Reddit to anyone who wants to read it there. Please check out the link in the description below. So without further ado, I'd like to talk about my experience with an MLM company. By the way, I have nothing else to put on my background, so here's me playing some Tekken matches online. And just a side note, this story was translated to English from my native language, and I have gaps of my knowledge regarding the situation as I'm a very forgetful person, but I'll write what happened to the best of my knowledge, okay? I'd like to start off with some context. So I had a friend who I was good friends with ever since I joined my university's theater group. Let's call her Mary. She was a devoted stage manager of the organization. To those not familiar, a stage manager is the one who facilitates everything on a stage production. Whether be it during rehearsals or the actual show itself, it's basically what we consider as a secondary director. I was very much best friends with Mary before we all graduated from college. After college, however, we just simply drifted apart. But after a few years, I've heard from a mutual friend who was still in contact with Mary that she was still doing production work as a stage manager, with now being a full-time career. I was thinking, wow, unlike most of us, she actually achieved her dream to work in theater. I was still helping out on my university production as an alumni while still balancing out my job, so I don't feel too envious about it. But I wanted to send her a message congratulating her on her dream career. It took a few minutes, but she responded with a thank you and followed up with the usual how are yous and how's life conversation. Not too long after, she sent me a message stating that her company is looking for part-timers and freelancers and asked me if there's anyone I knew who would be interested in it. Since our production season just ended and my job always starts at night, I wanted to have a go at it because I wanted to earn some extra income on the side. So I told her I'm interested. She said great, then proceeds to ask me additional questions. She started asking me how much income I make per month on my current job and what's my role in my current position. I find it kind of weird that she'd ask me questions like these, but I haven't put two and two together yet, so I just happily answered without questioning her about it. I eventually agreed to meet at their office on the weekends, considering it would be my day off. So off I go to their office building, which was very far from my city, mind you, but thanks to Google Maps, I was able to locate it with ease. Once I arrived, I texted Mary that I'm already here, and I asked her what floor is your office located. She then gave me a generic reply that I will meet her at a nearby convenience store, which I thought was very odd, but I obliged anyway. So 15 minutes of waiting, she eventually came out on one of the elevator doors of the building. I greeted her and we talked for a while regarding our life and such, and how things are and all that. But when I asked her regarding the type of work that I'll be doing as a part-timer, she was extremely vague regarding the description by saying, you'll promote our company's brand and such, and I realized that throughout our conversation regarding this part-time, she never once mentioned the company's name. So 10 minutes after conversing with her, she finally escorted me to their office floor. She mentioned they had 2 floors in this building. I forgot how the conversation went, but it was something along the lines of one floor being the production area and the other being the main office. The moment we stepped out of the elevator, she finally mentioned the company's name as it was clearly visible on the huge doors in front of us. She asked me if I was familiar with the said company name. I told her no. And then she went ahead and gave me a tour of the area while explaining the information regarding the company's founder and their products, which was mostly vitamins and supplements, and also their affiliated partners, which I thought was very credible. Despite all of this information she provided, I still did not know how the work is done and how to generate income as a part-timer. I should have mentioned this earlier, but I'd like to point out that I have not experienced any MLM schemes in my lifetime during this time in my life, so I was entirely oblivious to all of these red flags. During this time, I asked her about what happened with her theater career. She told me that she's still doing it, but only as a side job now. She reasoned out that having a performing arts as a career is not financially stable, which is true by the way in our country. So she started working with this company. So I thought to myself, okay, this would also be a good idea for me to save up. After the tour, I decided to ask her the specifics of the job itself, but her response to that was, everything will be discussed during the initial briefing. I was like, okay, cool. And she's like, no problem, hun. Although while she was escorting me to their main office, which I did mention was located on a different floor. Skipping directly to the part we arrived at the main office floor, passing through the door after exiting the elevator, I see tens and hundreds of tables and chairs all packed with people. Almost every chair was occupied with people while they were conversing on each of their individual tables. It was super hard to concentrate on what you're thinking because of all that noise. So anyways, Mary lets me sit down on one of the free chairs right next to a free table, which I thought was very convenient considering how much packed the place is. She then introduced me to her director and then proceeded to tell me how he's a great guy and how much he learned from him and all that. The director in question, let's call him Vinny. He mentions that he will be the one that will be discussing the business opportunity to me. During my discussion with Vinny, Mary leaves us alone together on the table. So most of you guys already know how MLM companies are with their process, on how things work on their business proposal and or how to get started. So I'll spare you guys the boring details. Skipping after the presentation, he then asked me, how was it? I told him that I genuinely liked it, mostly because of the products, but in regard to the business, however, I told Vinny that I wasn't really good at sales and all that. He responded immediately, no joke, that we have trainings for everything around here. Looking back at it, all my questions in regard to the proposal was promptly answered, as if he rehearsed and expected every question I asked because of this. I felt uncomfortable, and he must have noticed this because for some reason, he then excused himself and told me he'd get my friend so that we can talk it out about my decision. Shortly after, Mary sat down next to me and asked me how was the presentation. I told her I liked it, but I'm not good with sales and I don't have the means to start because the capital was too high for me and yada yada. She then told me a story how she got started on this company saying, we have the same situation as before, and how much she loaned from her aunt and how she was able to repay her within a month because of their amazing training. And she went ahead and told me to consider the same thing. Of course, I told her no, in the most respectable way possible, of course, because of our friendship, but every time I disagreed to her counter-argument regarding why I should start a business with them, she keeps following it up with her own sob stories and how she was able to go through with the struggle. This went on for a while. We keep going back and forth with my decision to start. And unfortunately, I eventually gave in. I didn't have enough funds to meet the capital, but I was able to loan money from my sweet grandmother. So the first few weeks was training. I didn't know what I was expecting really. It was my first time being in this kind of company and I don't know what I should do if I want to get out of it. On the bright side, most, if not all of the people there were very nice. Whenever I asked a question, they explained everything to me in a very simple manner and sometimes even give me examples. It was genuinely fun because of the people really. I wasn't able to get any sales at all though. I tried all their methods, tips and tricks, and their script. None of it seemed to work, and I also have the same experience as well with inviting people with the opportunity. Mostly negative remarks, but it was understandable, I guess. After my training, Mary informed me about this promotion thing that grants me like an additional 15% profit from the people who I invited in my organization every time they make a sale, and that it was a lifetime thing. She mentioned that there is a specific amount of sales I have to meet in order to attain it, and she also told me that the deadline was 8 weeks from now. Of course, I told her that it was impossible for me to do that as because I tried everything they told me and it was still ineffective. But she kept insisting that I can and will do it, telling me some inspirational quote or whatever. I don't really remember, but what I do remember is that during that 8-week period, she was pushing me to hit the goal in a very indirect way. Kinda like how it can't be considered forcing, but at the same time, it was really obvious and annoying. Like she keeps asking me how my sales were and how many people I invited this week and how the upcoming promotion deadline was X number of weeks from now and what are my plans for it and so forth. It was already the last week of the deadline and I barely scratched the goal for the promotion. There are many gaps of my knowledge about how all this went down, but Mary eventually convinced me to cover the sales that I wasn't doing so that I could be eligible for that promotion. And it was like over $4,000 roughly if you convert it to dollars, that is. And I don't know how I managed to persuade my grandmother to lend me that amount of money to cover up the promotion. but she did. And I felt really bad because of that. And then of course, as expected, Mary assured me that once you work really hard, eventually you won't have to worry about money anymore and yada yada and all that positive bullshit she keeps spewing at me every single time I have a negative experience either with the company or with an MLM company in general. Fast forward 3 months from now, I resigned from my job to do this work full time, but I'm still broke as and Mary is still spewing her positive remarks about how I will be getting a stable income soon. At this point, I can already see through her bullshit. I've had enough of this. Most of my friends are already avoiding me. I've lost stable income, and I'm deep in debt because of this. Of course, I blame myself for getting into this kind of company, but I also blame her. I lost trust with one of my bestest friends. I mean, I only joined this kind of industry because of her. I trusted her. I believed in her. I had absolutely no idea what an MLM even is before she introduced it to me. I felt really betrayed and taken advantage of, so I sent her a really long message of how much disappointed I am with her, that I can't keep doing this, and how I felt betrayed. Now, for the first time ever, she replied with a very long message of how sorry she is, how sorry that it didn't work out for me, and that she only wanted me to earn as much as she's earning. And then she asked me if I was still continuing with my business. I wanted to be calm and collective with my answer and told her that maybe I will in the future once I've settled all my debts. But in reality, I just didn't have the guts to tell her that I will never go back there. Never. I ended up deactivating my Facebook account because of how much of a trash it became because of this. I don't really use Facebook that much, so I really don't care. And I also decided to just ignore most of Mary's messages and apply for a new job. The good thing that came out of this was that I applied and got hired on a job on a major bank in the US that roughly gave me twice the income I was earning before. All the products I bought because of the promotion, me and my grandparents are using it for our benefit because they really were good products. So we're kind of settled for a year's worth of multivitamins. But I learned my lesson, the hard way that is.
You win. My pleasure.